They call it the witching hour. That time in the middle of the night when no humans are awake. When creatures of the night could hear them breathing, smell their blood, watch their dreams unfold. It's the time when the world is ours. When we can hunt, kill, protect. It's the time when I'm most eager to feed, but I must hold back. Because by holding back, by hunting only those animals whose blood never quickens with desire, whose hearts don't pound with joy, whose yearnings don't make them dream, I can control my destiny. I can hold back from the dark side. I can control my power. Which is why, on a night when I could smell blood all around me, when I know that in an instant I could connect to the power I've been resisting for long and will resist for all eternity, I need a right to write down my history, seeing various scenes and years connect to each other like beads on an everlasting chain. I can stay connected to who I was back when I was a human, and the only blood I ever heard rushing in my own ears and felt pounding in my heart was my own.
Chapter 1.
The day my life changed started out like any other. It was a hot August afternoon in 1864. The weather so oppressive that even the flies stopped swarming around the barn. The servants' children, who usually played wild games and shrieked as they ran from one chore to another, were silent. The air was still, as if holding off on a long-awaited thunderstorm. I planned to spend a few hours riding my horse, Mezzano, into the cool forest on the edge of the Veritas estate, my family home. I'd packed my satchel with a book and was intent on simply escaping. That was what I'd been doing most days that summer. I was 17 and restless, ready neither to join the war alongside my brother, nor to have father teach me how to run the estate. Every afternoon I had the same hope, that several hours of solitude would help me figure out who I was and what I wanted to become. My time at Boys Academy had ended last spring. My father had made me hold off on enrolling at University of Virginia until the war had ended. Since then, I'd been curiously stuck in the in-between. I was no longer a boy, not quite a man, and utterly unsure of what to do with myself. The worst part was that I had no one to talk to. Damon, my brother, was with General Grimm's army down in Atlanta. Most of my boyhood friends were either about to be betrothed or on faraway battlefields themselves, and father was constantly in his study.
Gonna be a hot one.
Overseer Robert yelled from the edge of the barn, where he was watching two stable boys attempt to bridle one of the horse's father had purchased at an auction last week. Yep, I grunted. There was another problem. While I yearned for someone to talk with, when presented with a conversation partner, I was never content. What I desperately wanted was to meet someone who could understand me, who could discuss real things like books and life, not just the weather. Robert was nice enough and one of father's most trusted advisors, but he was so loud and brash that even a 10-minute conversation could leave me exhausted.
Heard the latest?
Robert asked, abandoning the horse to walk towards me. I groaned inwardly. I shook my head. Haven't been reading the papers. What's General Groom doing now? I asked, even though conversation about the war was left me uneasy. Robert shielded his eyes from the sun as he shook his head.
No, not the war. The animal attacks. The folks over at Griffith's lost 5 chickens, all with gashes in their necks.
I paused mid-step, the hairs on my back and my neck rising on end. All summer, reports of strange animal attacks had emerged from neighboring plantations. Usually the animals were small, mostly chickens or geese. But in the past few weeks, someone, probably Robert, after 4 or 5 tumblers of whiskey, had begun a rumor that the attacks were the work of the demons. I didn't believe that, but it was one more reminder that the world wasn't the same I'd grown up in. Everything was changing, whether I wanted it to or not. Could have been a stray dog that killed him, I told Robin, with an impatient wave of my hand, parroting the words I'd overheard Father say to Robin last week. A breeze picked up, causing the horses to stomp their feet nervously.
Well, then I hope one of those stray dogs doesn't find you when you're out riding alone like you do every day.
With that, Robin strolled off towards the pasture. I walked into the cool, dark stable. The steady rhythm of breathing and snorting of the horses relaxed me instantly. I plucked Mezzano's brush from the wall and began combing through her smooth, coal black coat. She whinnied in appreciation. Just then, the stable door creaked open, and Father stepped in. A tall man, Father carried himself with so much force and presence that he easily intimidated those who crossed his path. His face lined with wrinkles that only added to his authority, and he wore a formal morning coat despite the heat. "Stefan," Father called, glancing around the stalls. Even though he'd lived at very Taz for years, he'd probably only been near a stable a few times, preferring to have his horses prepared and brought straight to the door. I ducked out of Mezzano's stall. Father picked his way towards the back of the stable. His eyes flicked over mine, and I felt suddenly embarrassed for him, seeing me caked in sweat and dirt. "We have stable boys for a reason, son." "I know," I said, feeling as though I disappointed him. "There's a time and a place for having fun with horses. But then there's a point. It's time for a boy to stop playing and becoming a man." Father hit Mezzano on the flanks hard. She snorted and took a step back. I clenched my jaw, waiting for him to tell me about how, when he was my age, he'd moved to Virginia from Italy, with only the clothes on his back, how he'd fought and bargained to build a tiny 1-acre plot of land in what was now the 200 acres of Veritas estate. How he'd named it that because Veritas was Latin for truth. Because he'd learned that as long as a man searched for truth and fought deception, he didn't need anything else in life. Father leaned against the door of the stall. "Rosalind Cartwright just celebrated her 16th birthday. She's looking for her husband." "Rosalind Cartwright?" I repeated. When we were 12, Rosalind had gone to a French school outside of Richmond, and I hadn't seen her in ages. She was a nondescript girl with mousy blonde hair and brown eyes. In every memory I held of her, she wore a brown dress. She'd never been sunny and laughing, like Clementine Aberford, or flirty and feisty like Amelia Hawke, or smart and mischievous like Sarah Brennan. She was simply a shadow in the background, content to trail along on all our childhood adventures, but never to lead them. "Yes, Rosalind Cartwright." Father gave me one of his rare smiles, with the corner of his lips turned so slightly upward. One would think he was sneering if one did not know him well. "Her father and I have been talking, and it seems the ideal union. She's always been quite fond of you, Stefan." "I don't know if Rosalind Cartwright and I are a match," I mumbled, feeling as though the cool walls of the stable were closing in on me. Of course, Father and Mr. Cartwright had been talking. Mr. Cartwright owned a bank in town. If Father had an alliance with him, it would be so easy to expand Veritas even further. And if they'd been talking, it was as good as done that Rosalind and I would be man and wife. "Of course you don't know, boy," Father guffawed, slapping me on the back. He was in remarkably good spirits. My spirits, however, were sinking lower and lower with each word. I squeezed my eyes shut, hoping this was all a bad dream. "No, boy. Your age knows what's good for him. That's why you need to trust me. I'm arranging a dinner for next week to celebrate the two of you. In the meantime, pay your call. Get to know her. Compliment her. Let her fall in love with you. Father finished, taking my hand and pressing the box inside my palm. What about me? What if I don't want her to fall in love with me? I wanted to say, but I didn't. I shoved the box in my back pocket without glancing at its contents, then went back to attending mezzanine, brushing her so hard she snorted and stepped back in an indignation. I'm glad we had this talk, son, Father said. I waited for him to notice that I barely said a word, to realize that it was absurd to ask me to marry a girl I hadn't spoken to in years. Father, I said, hoping he would say something to set me free from the fate he laid out for me. I think October would be lovely for a wedding, my father said instead, letting the door bang shut behind him. I clenched my jaw in frustration. I thought back to our childhood, when Rosalind and I would find ourselves pushed to sit together at Saturday barbecues and church socials, but the forced socialization simply hadn't worked, and as soon as we were old enough to choose our own playmates, Rosalind and I were now separate. Our relationship was going to be just as it was when we were 10 years younger, ignoring each other while dutifully making our parents happy, except now I realize grimly we'd be bound together forever.